Hello there. Well, I'm in a room which is perhaps a slightly different start to some of these adventures. I'm in a room in the Park Hotel in Peebles. Wee bit on the expensive side as far as I'm concerned, but you know, we've got a good weather day tomorrow and I wanted to take advantage of it. But the problem is that the trains are on strike tomorrow. And while there is some sort of service, it's just not the service that it normally is. So I thought, okay, well, I'll just get buses then. Travel down today to Peebles, walk tomorrow and get a bus back. But of course, as far as hotels are concerned, I think the whole pricing system is just very unfair. For example, I originally intended to stay at the Peebles Hydro. Lovely looking old hotel with great views and all this sort of thing. So I got off the bus and headed up there, and the guy behind the counter, who seemed a bit lackadaisical in attitude, he couldn't really, it's as if he couldn't really care that much about anything, which in itself put me off, you know. So he took all my details, every single detail, and then he gave me the price for the room for one night. It was £220, and that was the cheapest price. That was the room that wasn't going to give you a view. £220. They had to carry him out of the place. I was cackling uncontrollably, cackling in a maniacal way, escorted from the premises. Not really, I'm kidding. I'm not kidding about the price. That's just unbelievable, you know. And they say, well, it's cheaper if you book online. So after sort of rooting around the streets of Peebles, where most places were fully booked, I decided to go for the Park Hotel here, which, as I say, was a wee bit more costly than I'm used to. It's going to be over £100, you know. And yet when you look at the sign at their entrance, it says stuff like, I can't remember exactly what it says, but it's something like singles upwards of 45, doubles upwards of 65 or something like that. And I just think the whole thing's very misleading. But they say, yes, well, it's cheaper if you book it online. But I'm here now, you know. Why should it be more expensive if I turn up out of the blue? I'm inclined to think there's a bit of a nonsense happening here as far as the hotel industry is concerned. But anyway, let's start this adventure with too big a moan, you know. At least when I set off in the morning, I'll have a good breakfast in me and we can get on with the day's walking. I'm going to be walking part of what's called the Cross Borders Drove Road. Probably a mixture of paths and old drove roads, you know, just that's what it says in the tin, that would have been used by people moving cattle about the place from their steading to market and such like. The Cross Borders Drove Road, I think it seems to be roughly about 51 miles in total, running from West Lothing to somewhere, just hold on, Hoyk, yeah, Hoyk to something like Little Vantage in West Lothing, wherever that is. It's about 11 miles, it's mostly on hills, so it's going to take me a bit of time, what with the filming and what have you. The sort of height we're going to go up to looks as if Kirkhope Law is 536 metres above sea level. And once we're up in the hills, we're sort of got up there for most of the day, then we'll come down past Traquair House and into Innerleithen. So I'm looking forward to the walk. You know, sometimes Glasgow feels a bit busy and you just want to get away from the place. Indeed, when I got off the bus in Edinburgh this morning, Edinburgh felt busy as well. I just wanted to get as far away from it as possible. And I suspect we probably won't see anybody in tomorrow's walk. I'm very much looking forward to it. That's the opening spiel out of the way. When I get up in the morning, it'll be breakfast and we'll be straight onto the road. And we'll see how we go. So, I'll see you in the morning. Well, that's us on the sort of open hill now. I'm a kind of steep climb or walk just up to the top there. But once we're up there, I don't think there's too many undulations, and I think it'll just be absolutely cracking. And from what I gather, once we do get up top, the drove road itself becomes quite well defined, and you come to perhaps realise that this isn't just a random track through the countryside. It's actually not just well planned as far as a route to take all your sheep and cattle is concerned. There are parts of it that are actually pretty well constructed. I think in places they've built banks either side of the track just to keep their cattle on the track so that they don't wander off into other areas and make it more difficult to sort them all out. Once we're up top, but I'll eventually drop down, and I will be leaving the Cross Borders Drove Road to head by Traquair and into Innerleithen, and for a very small section we will be joining the Southern Upland Way, an absolutely huge long distance path in this part of the country. I think it goes from coast to coast. It's something like 212 miles. It's huge, and I've done it in two halves decades ago, and I do remember it has been a very remote path. You could go for days without seeing anyone other than your accommodation at the end of the day that you would have booked in advance. It's advisable to do that. But you know, there are no shops. Your accommodation might be the only sign of civilization in the middle of nowhere. No shops, there's nobody around. You've really got to keep your eye on the ball as far as map reading is concerned and compass use. the cross borders drove road in itself isn't greatly signposted, and you do have to be able to read a map. I have my map with me, and the route, you'll see that the route I've highlighted in the highlighter pen, and that just makes it a little bit easier to see what's going on at a glance, so you're not having to stop and start, oh, what's that, where are we, etc, etc. Just makes it an awful lot easier. I mean, one of the last videos I did on the northern part of the Isle of Bute, where you were sort of following fence posts with a little arrow on it, which seemed fairly straightforward. As I said at the time, it was very boggy, but that would be a difficult route in mist, in the same way that this might be a difficult route in mist. And that's why it's crucial to have a map with you and a compass, and to know what to do with them, to know what all these different coloured lines are. And as I say, decades ago, hello there, hiya. I did the Southern Upland Way in 2 halves, and you can actually read about that and other walks, hello, in a couple of ebooks that I did a while back. I'll put an advert at the end of the video, you can see what they are, and you can see just how much of an idiot I made of myself in the past. And that's a trait that has thankfully not changed one jot, and I'm still a bit of a balloon these days when the opportunity presents itself. But anyway, let's continue up to the top and pick up the Drove Road proper. Well, you can see the Drove Road ahead, just behind me, which way it's going. At the moment we've just come around the side of Upper Newby and come up the first kind of pretty steep bit leading to a section at 427 metres above sea level, and it continues from here for roughly a mile towards Cailsea Hill, then Kirkhope Law. And I think you can probably see Kirkhope Law way in the distance, just on the horizon. In fact, we've got forest on the left there. So we're making pretty good time. And I think we'll probably stop for lunch on the top of Kirkhope Law with views all around, 536 metres above sea level. And at that point we'll know exactly what's going on time-wise, whether we need to rush or not. I don't think we are going to have to rush. I think it's all looking good. So, come on. Well, this is the highest point on today's walk. It's Kirkhope Law, 536 metres above sea level and full of flies. It's a hot day and it was a bit of a trek coming up there. But from here, I'll carry on down for roughly a mile, then I'm going to leave this well-defined path and turn left, which I think is still going to be the Drove Road. And from what I understand, at some point the way's not going to be very clear. It could just be rough ground. We'll see. I mean, I can see if we're going from one pointy edge of a forest to another pointy edge of a forest, and if the forest is still there, keep your map up to date, because forests come and go. Then it's just a case of taking a compass bearing from one point to the other. But we'll see, it might be quite clear and not have to do that. I just want to return briefly to what I was talking about at the beginning of the video, assuming that I kept that bit in and haven't deleted it. And that's the subject of the pricing system in hotels. I mean, why should someone who turns up out of the blue, someone who hasn't booked in advance, be charged a more expensive price for a hotel room? And I don't mean just a more expensive price, I mean a grossly exaggerated expensive price. Just the markup's absolutely horrendous. You know, if you're a hotel and some guy turns up looking for a room for the night, and you have rooms, it means nobody's booked these rooms in advance, and these rooms might actually go with no one staying in them. You could be losing money. Why should you then charge that poor soul who has turned up such an exorbitant price for the room, effectively scaring him away? It's ridiculous. Surely it makes much more business sense to say, well, we've got these rooms spare, nobody's booked them, tell you what, you can have this at a cut down price. I mean, the very fact that, as I said earlier, the Peebles Hydro on their website, I think it says something along the lines of rooms, single rooms, begin at £65 or something like that. And I thought, okay, well, fair enough, might not be exactly that, might be a wee bit more. And the fact that you turn up out of the blue and the price they give you, and it wasn't even for the best room. The guy said, well, it's this be the cheaper price because it might not have the good view. And I'm thinking, yeah, okay. £220. It's totally absurd. It really is. And I can almost guarantee that that hotel would have had the rooms to spare that night. And the Park Hotel where I stayed is no different. I think it belongs to the same group as the Peebles Hydro. Not that I wish to have a go at this particular hotel chain, or indeed the hotels in Peebles, because I got some absolutely really friendly service in some places in Peebles where, you know, you're saying, have you got a room for the night? And somebody says, no, we're fully booked, but let me check booking.com for you and we'll see if I can find you something. That's exceptional customer service. But I think this is a pricing thing it's ubiquitous in the hotel industry in the UK, if not around the world, and I think it's a nonsense. I really do. As I say, I'll show you a photograph just now. This is what it says at the entrance to the Park Hotel. Excuse me, can't remember exactly. I think it was either 45 or 49 for a single room, 65 or 69 for a double room, and it said prices start at that. You think, okay, prices start at that, seems fairly reasonable. Not going to maybe pay that, it might be a wee bit more. And the price that they come back to you when you turn up out of the blue, because the first price I was given was £140. Okay, I'm just a guy in his own, I'm using what they call a twin room, which is again a bit of a flaming nonsense, because you're talking about a tiny wee room, most of which is taken up by a twin bed. You've got to shuffle your way around this bed in order to get from one bit of the room to the other, you know. I just think there's something far wrong. There's too much emphasis on booking websites. I remember, for example, not that long ago, I've been down in Leeds. Again, I turned up at a hotel out of the blue. Maybe I should have booked, you know. It turns out that there was 2 major events on in Leeds that weekend and I couldn't find accommodation. I had to end up getting a train back to Glasgow. But I went into one hotel and said, "Did you any rooms, like a room for tonight?" And I said, "Oh, it's got to be done through booking.com. And I said, well, I'm actually in the hotel reception. Can I not just do it here, you know? Can you not sort me out now? He said, no, it's got to be done through booking.com. And the guy was fairly helpful, you know. He said, well, look at that, I'll book it for you. He went on his phone. I said, just forget it, you know. Now I'd seen such a ridiculous scenario in all my life. And you know, at the end of the day, maybe this is just an old man's thing, because I don't have a smartphone. That's not to say that I can't book online in advance on my computer, but I just think it's very unfair for people who do turn up out of the blue, and I think a lot of hotels are shooting themselves in the foot. They need to take a long, hard look at themselves and really sort this pricing charade. So there. Go away, flies. God's sake. And the young lad at reception at the Peebles Hydro, I don't think he'd ever come across anybody who hadn't booked. I could sense that he wasn't entirely sure how to deal with it. Because he had to ask the other lassie who was also sitting at reception. Because the first thing he did was he took all my details, which took a bit of time, and he had such a lackadaisical attitude. This is a young boy who couldn't give a monkey's of anything. Why he was in the job, I don't actually know. He certainly put me off. And after a while I said, so that'll be £220. At which point, as I say, I was eventually led from the building, cackling uncontrollably. £220. God, I'd bear it. You're having a laugh. And I used the toilet, and on the way out I said to a couple who were sitting admiring the view, I said to them, £220 for a room. And they were as surprised as I was. They must have booked in advance and presumably got it a heck of a lot cheaper. What is wrong with the world? Anyway, I've got a pie from Forsyth, the bakers and the butchers in Peebles. And I also had one last night. It's a very good pie. I forget what you call them now. I kind of used to call them mutton pies, but I think it's beef that's in it. Around, I forget the name. But it's a very good pie. The casing's thin, crisp, and very tasty. It's a good pie. But I had such a big breakfast. I tried to eat my £115 worth of food. So I'm not hungry, so I'll have my pie later on. And I'll see you at some point heading for Traquair, hoping that I can pick up this this path. See you shortly. Well, I come off the main track there. If you missed that, you've been in trouble because you'd be going straight into the hills again. We've got a fairly well, easy to see path here. And we're following the edge of this woodland here, which is still here. And I can see just that there's the edge, or a corner there. And just there, I'm hoping this will go to the left to another corner. Then we'll see how we go. We might have to find our own way around Birks Hill. But it's looking good. It's very important that you kind of know what you're doing with your map, and you're constantly keeping your eyes out for things on the ground that are on your map, so that you can get a good handle on where you are, so that in the event that things do suddenly go kind of wrong, you can correct them a lot easier than if you just were wandering around in a willy-nilly fashion. But yeah, it's full of bonny purple heather, and it's looking lovely, I have to say. And I think we'll get into Innerleithen in good time, maybe in time for a beer before getting the bus back to Edinburgh. I can sense a drought coming on. Well, I've made it to Innerleithen and I'm in the Traquair Arms Hotel. Hope I've got the name right there. And I'm absolutely wrecked. Absolutely shattered. I came through just the edge of the Traquair House estate. There's a newish path that at least takes you off a kind of fairly busy narrow road, but in coming that way I missed the bare gates that I was going to stop at and just say a couple of words. The bare gates are the main gates to Traquair House, and they've been closed since 1745. and they will remain closed until a Stuart dynasty returns to the throne. So I thought I'd end with a bottle of beer made in Traquair House. They've got an old brewery inside, and this is Traquair's Jacobite Ale. Now the only small issue here, let me just show you the label. The only small issue is that it's 8%. And given how tired I am, if I drink this I may not be able to get up off the seat. But I don't think I've ever tried this. 8% is very strong. You wouldn't want to be drinking a lot of that. And I've got a drought. This could ruin me. It's a very dark beer. Wow. %, and I haven't had my pie yet. We could be in trouble. I'm going to get the 4:25 bus to Edinburgh, then I'll get a bus from there back to Glasgow, so that gives me some time to kill just sort of chilling out here. It's been a hell of a walk. It's been much more enjoyable, much more scenic than I could ever have imagined. Probably made better by the weather. It was just awesome, you know, it really was. I didn't take much footage coming down off the hill. It was kind of similar to footage on the way up, and I just put in a bit of speed to get down to ground level. Feel free to use the comment section in this video to discuss a topic I was talking about at the beginning and in the middle of the video in connection with the pricing in hotels. Let's see if we can sort it. I'm Eddie Burns, to the King.